Okay, we'll move on to our class. And last time we talked about a very interesting subject, in my opinion, anyway, which was the two sets of books. And the books were open, and another uh, set of books were open. And most people don't realize when they read that there's two different sets of books. And it's kind of interesting to think about that when the books are really open is during your life review right after you die. You get to see what was really true about everything that was going on. In other words, you listen to these people on TV arguing politics or religion, you think, well, who's true, or what's the real truth of the matter is. The first set of books reveals the truth to us about everything that went on in the lower world, and the world where everybody's just struggling to make a living and make a name for themselves. What's the truth of the matter of all the arguments and all the disagreements? Where would be the real truth, the real solution, the real best decision to have made? In other words, when these books are open in the regular world, we're going to see basically how screwed up it was and why it was screwed up and why things didn't work. And we will be able to see how things could have been adjusted so they would have worked. And the second set of books are around the disciples, those that are connected to the tree of life, and those that are able to look within and find the Christ within. And these people basically live their lives according to seeing through the eyes of Christ, in the fact that the decisions they made was, pretty much the best possible decision that could have been made with what they had. And these are the ones that we will see how their lives went when they were connected to the true vine and followed the instructions or the direction they got from their inner Christ. And this is the second book. And I find that very interesting to contemplate on, and that everybody will be able to have that life review where they will see accurately. Haven't you ever had an argument with somebody that you thought, boy, I just can't get my point across to them? They just refuse to see. Wouldn't it be nice to be in a situation in the life review and be aware that everybody else that dies goes through a life review of their particular life, and they're going to see very accurately what they did that was right and what they did that was wrong and what they could have done and what they could have made of themselves. They will be able to see the whole picture, and they will be able to see it very clearly. And uh, if if we were connected to the that inner Christ, if and then you die and have your life review, you won't be hitting yourself on the head and think, "Whoa, how did I get this so wrong?" You can feel, you'll be able to feel that, man, I'm sure thankful I was connected. I wasn't perfect, but at least I was trying to do the right thing. And
You want to come back and do it again. Better.
right. And that's what people do when they have their life review and they see how much they screwed up. If they weren't connected, they weren't getting that. They were going by the outer voices rather than the inner. They'll make a lot of mistakes. They'll want to come back and have a strong desire to come back and do better in a future life. Okay, and so basically, we ended up talking about how at the end of discipleship and also the writings at this point pertain to uh, the age of peace that we will eventually move into as a society. So it has a dual meaning here. What you will do as an individual when you uh, master the material world, and also the world itself will move into an age where they will be governed by the consciousness of Christ. And when this happens, it says, and God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things have passed away. Now, what do you think this means? Does this mean that in this new age that we're approaching, that no one's going to die at all? That we're going to live forever? I would submit not really. What it really means is we will move into a much better situation. There's not going to be nearly as much disease and pain, and the consciousness is going to shift. So when we're connected to spirit, even though the body may die, we don't see it as death. Now, right now, people really fear death. Even a lot of people that believe in God have a tremendous fear of death. A lot of them fear going to hell, and they fear God. They fear just all kinds of things. And but what will be different is that a lot of these fears will go away because a large number of people, when the age of peace comes in, will be in contact with the inner Christ. And when they're in contact with the inner Christ, their health will be a lot better, their life will be a lot better, their tears will be wiped away from their eyes. And it says there will be no more death, but there will be no more death in the fact that there's no more fear of death. If you see your body as a tool that you use until it's no longer useful, and then you lay it down and move on, that's not like uh, death. That's like you're just moving on. Okay, so the attitude toward death will be so much different. Instead of being annihilated or going to hell or uh, being judged by a fierce god of some kind, if we just see ourselves as moving from one place to another when the body is no longer useful, then it's like there's no death. And this is one of the things that a lot of people experience with near-death experiences. They're told to go back and tell people there is no death. Now, there's several ways to define death. Uh, the accurate way to define it is the death of the physical body. It means you just move on from the physical body. But another way of looking at it is of a loss. We lose our consciousness and we don't know where we're going. And so it's like a terrifying death. But when we have that consciousness that there's no loss, that we're just moving on, like if your car gets old and you need to trade it in, that's not the death of you. That's you're moving on to actually a better car. You're going to get a newer model that does better stuff. And so you, you don't look upon moving from one car to another to a better situation as a bad thing. And the word death is associated with a lot of negative thought forms. But when this happens, death will not be looked the death of the body will not be looked on as death. It'll be looked on as just moving on.
Well, the Tibetan wrote a book called Death, the Great Adventure. So, the words speak for itself. Yeah, you're separating from your body. You're separating from everything you've created, but you have the ability to recreate yourself at a higher turn of the spiral. He talks
Yeah,
about
yeah,
it's an adventure.
yep. So that'll be one of the biggest shifts in the age of Aquarius when it reaches its apex. Is we'll have a totally different attitude toward death. And the Tibetan makes an interesting prediction that science will actually invent a device that will allow us to communicate with the other side. And when that happens, then the fear of death will pretty much evaporate. I can imagine if they legitimately create a device like that, that a lot of the really religious people will think they're communicating with the devil. But eventually that would fade away. That if it's a true communication device that allows us to communicate with the other side, that would eventually over time be totally accepted, and people would realize there's really nothing to fear. And he that sat upon the throne said, Behold, I make all things new. And he said unto me, Write, for these words are true and faithful. So we shall live in a new heaven, a new earth, a new city, but this is just the beginning. Everything will be new, improved, and different compared to today. Now, just think back. I think back when I was a kid, how different things are today compared to when I was a kid. And then a couple of generations before that. Just think back 200 years ago. I mean, they didn't have any radio, TV, internet. They didn't even have toilet paper. So they didn't have a lot of stuff we have today. And for entertainment, boy, they were really hungry for entertainment. Somebody comes into town with some type of preaching or entertainment, the whole town had come out to see him because there was nothing else to do. So the situation we're in is so much different. It was so much different when I was a kid compared to generations before then. But even thinking back to when I was young, it's so much different. When I was a little kid, we didn't even have a TV. We used to gather around the radio and listen to like Amos and Andy and The Shadow Knows and different uh, uh, shows that was on the radio, and it was pretty interesting because you had to use your imagination to visualize everything that was being portrayed. But it was, and then when we got our TV, it was boy, that was a big deal for me. I mean, I was so thrilled. I watched it from the time it come on. It come on at 4 in the afternoon and went off about 11:30 at night. And I watched it from the time I got home from school until it went off, and there was just snow. I even watched the cooking shows. I watched everything because it was just so marvelous to actually have a TV. I was just enthralled with that when we first got it. But now, it's really not a big deal. But imagine what it's going to be like if we look where we are now compared to where we were 60 years ago or so. And then imagine what it's going to be like in the future. I was listening to Elon Musk give a speech the other day, and he was saying that his vision of the future is that everybody's going to have all they want. They're working on these robots, not only him, but numerous companies are working on robots. And robots will eventually do everything for us. They'll cost equivalent of about, eventually when they're mass produced, they'll cost equivalent of a car or something like, or maybe cheaper. They want to get it down to around $20,000 for one, and it'll be able to mow your lawn, cook your meals, uh, and it'll be able to create things for us. It'll build houses for us. It'll build cars for us. So if we get all these robotics in play, they will be able to create everything anybody wants. So eventually there will be, if the vision is that there will be no poor because we will use these robotic mechanisms to create everything that everybody wants. And no, everybody will have houses, everybody will have cars, whatever they need. That could happen within the next 100 years, or maybe even earlier, if we continue our progression, if we don't blow ourselves up first. That's the big hurdle for us. But
Kind of reminds me of that song by Zager and Evans in the year 2525.
yeah, that was a cute song.
Yeah.
And he said unto me, it is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give unto him that is athirst of the fountain of the water of life freely. So in this new world, we'll have all good things available to us to bring joy and happiness. Now, we're talking about these robotics that will create the material things that we want, but we're also going to have the more important than that will be the spiritual. But, if you're worried about your house payments or where you're going to get money for your next meal, you can't really focus very much on a spiritual quest, because all your focus is on survival. And so if the survival needs can be taken care of, so people don't have to worry about making payments and taking care of themselves and their basic needs, then they can concentrate on other things progressing in the realm of spirit and of consciousness. And the teachings about the spiritual realm is really permeating society. Um, like I mentioned, these near-death experiences are nobody even heard of a near-death experience when I was young, but now they're very popular on YouTube and the internet. So that's making a lot of people think, even atheists are thinking, well, maybe there is something over there. And so people are viewing all kinds of things on the internet, YouTube, and social media. They're being exposed to a lot of ideas that our grandparents just were not exposed to at all. Now, there's positive and negative on everything, but in this new age that we're approaching, we'll have a lot more free time. And with free time, if free time can be positive or negative, you can use it for good or bad. But the enterprising people, the people that really want to progress, a lot of them will take an interest in the various spiritual teachings. There's a tremendous interest in healing these days, alternative methods of healing, and that's kind of a spiritual direction. And a lot of people are interested in different types of philosophies. And so many more people will be on a quest as time is freed up. Also, will happen that people will be on a much higher percentage of people will be on a vision quest to find themselves and understand who they really are and their connection with spirit. And then it says, yeah, Curtis.
I just said amen, hallelujah. That's a that's a good. I think everybody should be on a spiritual vision quest to
Yeah, a
discover.
lot of people are unable to just because they spend all their time just trying to make a living. And he that overcometh shall inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he will be my son. So we will learn our true identity as sons of God. Jesus himself was called a son of God, and we are entitled to that awareness just as he was. Then it says, but the fearful, the unbelieving, and the abominable, and the murderers, and the whoremongers, and the sorcerers, and the idolaters, and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. And we talked earlier about fire and brimstone. Fire in the Greek is a symbol of enlightenment, and brimstone comes from the same root word that God comes from, so that they will have their part in being enlightened from their encounter with their own souls, with the God within. And these are the obstacles they have to overcome. These are the ones that are not connected to the tree of life. It gives us these um, let me see, 7 different things that are barriers between us and the tree of life. The first one, it says fear, the fearful and unbelieving. Okay, fear, one can never live on this new earth with no more sea if he lives with fear. This fear energizes the power of the lower emotions, so it creates a barrier between man and spirit. You don't usually think of one who is fearful as being unspiritual. Sometimes you see people that are fearful and they think they're very spiritual, but fear is a, a tremendous detriment barrier between us and spirit that has to be overcome. Second, the unbelieving. To obtain the new Jerusalem, we have to have a believing spirit, but that's much more different than a gullible spirit. What's the difference, do you think, between having a believing spirit and a gullible spirit? Let's pick on somebody here. Well, let's pick on Ruth again. Are you there, Ruth? Oh, I don't see her picture there.
And Ken can answer that one.
Okay, well, let's pick on Ken. What's the difference between being believing and gullible, Ken?
Well, if you're believing, you believe it from something within yourself. And if you're gullible, you're believing something somebody else told you.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Told you.
Okay, any other comments? What's the difference between a believing spirit and a gullible spirit? Ken, give us a good synopsis there. Any other ideas? How about
Well,
you?
if you're gullible, you haven't really thought it out in your own mind. You don't have a basis for, or a premise for fact. You can vacillate. Maybe I'll believe this way today. Maybe I'll believe something else tomorrow because I'm gullible. I'm swaying in my beliefs. I don't have a firm foundation.
Yeah, I'd say a believing spirit is one that's just open to everything.
Yeah.
So if you say something that's really crazy, like Jesus said some things that really threw people for a loop, and the unbelieving just didn't even consider it. Now the gullible they're the people that you appeal to their ego, and they'll say, "Yeah, I'll go along with that." But the believing people are just open to everything, able to consider things that maybe go against the grain of the world. Okay, the third thing he pointed out that's the barrier is the abominable. This comes from a Greek word called deluso, which basically means one who gives off a repulsive stench. So this wouldn't be a physical repulsion, but more of a spiritual one. The abominable person, according to this, and would be just a person that when he's with a group, he just can't be one with that group because he's contrary, he's critical, he's just he just can't fit in with anybody because he's so stubborn. We all know that type of person that is really uh, just can't blend in with anybody. So the opposite of that is a person that is able to be a team player with the group and blend in with the group purpose and the oneness of the group. Okay, and this particularly applies to a group that is connected to the soul. Fourth problem that interferes with us being in the New Jerusalem will be whoremongers. This comes from the Greek word pornos. I think you can guess what words come from that. But in ancient times, this was a male prostitute. So we talked about the problem with female energy being misused in the past, but here the male energy is also misused. And the male energy is more radiant and outgoing. And the people who misuse the male energy are like corrupt business practices, like corrupt attorneys, politicians, preachers, corrupt salesmen. These would be the whoremongers misusing the male energy. Okay, the fifth is sorcerers. This comes from the Greek word pharmalia, which the current word pharmacy comes from. And so these are people that are addicted to lean on too much on different drugs, and for various reasons. So we have to be the disciple has to be free of these addictions, these things that control us. We have to control them rather than them controlling us. The average person my age, I was reading a while back, takes about 7 prescription drugs. And so that's really not necessary. I don't take any prescription drugs. You take any prescription drugs, Curtis?
One for neuropathy. I got a little tingling in my toes.
Oh, do you?
It doesn't seem to do much.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Not really.
there's a handful of drugs that accomplish a good purpose. But then,
Aspirin, if you have a headache, aspirin is as good a thing as to take as any. Just
yeah, yeah,
don't take anything
I
very
take
often.
aspirin about 3, 4 times a year.
Yeah.
And but the thing is to not be addicted to them.
Addicted.
And what they do these days, they prescribe you a drug, and then it has side effects, and then they prescribe you another drug to help you with those side effects, and then you get more side effects. And that's why some people take 7 to a dozen different drugs all the time, and they become very dependent on these.
Well, that's where your antichrist energies are, is in the pharmaceuticals.
Yeah,
as much as anywhere.
then you have the illegal drugs too, which is the same problem. But all these different drugs are kind of dull our senses, and many of them become addictive, especially the ones that are addictive. Now, aspirin isn't really addictive, and but the drugs that are addictive, those are the ones that we have to try to be free of. Okay, idolaters. Idolater is one that worships a false god rather than the true God. And where's the true God found? Right,
Oh, Ben.
right. So if instead of getting your answers and your especially the direction for your life's purpose and your life's course and the decisions you're going to make should be mainly by looking and sensing the inner direction. When you depend on the outer gods, the outer authorities, the preachers, the politicians, the doctors, to tell you what to do above the voice within, then that's idolatry. And then it says all liars. Now notice the verse doesn't say liars, but all liars. So it's it it doesn't think it's a the author doesn't think it's a good idea for any lies to be in circulation. And this is an important thing for the disciple to learn, is to always tell the truth. And it's very difficult to always tell the truth, because if you're not careful, you can be caught in a situation where the temptation to lie is very strong. And what I've done in my life to always be as truthful as possible is I always look ahead. And when I look ahead, I think, now this situation is developing, say, in business or marriage or friendship, and this is going to happen. How am I going to respond if my friend says this or my friend takes this direction? So you look and see how things are developing, and then you ask yourself, how will I respond? Can I be honest in this situation? How can I handle this situation so that I can be truthful? Now, to be truthful doesn't mean you say everything that you know, because even in the Bible, it says it's the glory of God to
Conceal a thing.
conceal a thing. Yeah. So even God doesn't tell us everything that's on his mind. But so you don't have to say everything that's on your mind, but what you do say should be true. And it's when you look back on your life, all of us can see times that was very difficult to be honest. And it takes a lot of skill and intelligence to be a very honest person without offending a lot of people.
It's not always wise to reveal all truth.
Yeah, I've encountered people that said that were very offensive, and they'll say, "Well, I'm just being honest." Well, you can be honest without offending people. You know, if somebody's fat, you don't have to say, "Hey, you're too fat and sloppy," or whatever. You're ugly. Uh, that may be true from your perspective, but it's not a good idea to just blurt it out. So you can be honest without being offensive, but it takes a degree of intelligence to be an honest person and live your life in peace without being an offense to others. Okay, any comments on that we've covered so far?
That's
Okay.
why God gave us the Fifth Amendment.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, I cannot answer that question.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes silence is the best way
Yeah.
to go. Okay, my friends, any more comments before we wrap it up? Well, appreciate you coming here on an off day, and we'll just plan on meeting. I guess next Sunday I think we'll meet at 2:30 or 2 o'clock Mountain Time. And until then, may the Spirit be with you.
Thank you, Joe. Good class.
Take care all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.